Private equity funds took a big hit recently when the US stock market, despite President Trump signing an executive order in August allowing the US pension fund to invest in this asset class. Recently, we have witnessed underperforming stocks of big private equity funds, despite them being pushed on the US pension fund, is indicative of how lack of transparency was actually helping them. If you're a business owner with an online component, this actually concerns you too. I know you're thinking, what does this have to do with me? Well, if you know that you need to be running ads, but you're too afraid to invest the money in them yet, or you simply do not have the funds to do so, then this video might be for you. We're going to talk about how you might be able to finance them. We're also going to talk about investment companies taking over physical assets and critical infrastructure and controlling things like US energy prices. Is that really a bad thing? Historically, their projections offered stable returns to investors. Were they faking it? Let's see if that's the case. Now, if you want to get funding for your business, you're going to want to better understand all these things. Ultimately, in this video, we're going to look at private equity assets from a political point of view and how being too free in a free market actually steers it back into authoritarian regime territory. But before we get into it, allow me to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Dr. Serena. I am a PhD in architecture with machine learning, and I help businesses grow their profit margins and become sellable assets. I'm also not serving a great face card today. I just woke up. Anyway, if this is something you'd like to do with your business, there are some useful links down below. Anyway, let's get into it. Now, this video has been triggered by a recent narrative around the so-called private equity crisis. Back in June, The Economist wrote an entire special on the dangers of private equity funds because they are untested. They compared it with the US stock market, which is way more mature, more regulated, after having gone through that whole experience we saw in Wolf of Wall Street. I keep specifying US because not all stock markets are the same. So, what is private equity? Is private equity investment an asset class, an investment tool, a strategy? What exactly is it? Patrick Boyle's latest videos address the failure of First Brands and underperforming stocks from Blackstone and Apollo. Patrick says that a former investment banker managing a plumbing company is wrong. I partially disagree with Patrick on this one. Yes, these guys are now doing due diligence, valuation, and maybe even interim management of these businesses as a whole, but only from a leveraging perspective. Their backgrounds in investment banking specifically make them probably the best choice for this position to ensure liquidity. But we'll get to that later. When we get there, if you're confused now, I guarantee you'll see some familiar faces and you will be less confused. Anyway, yeah, for P, there is an issue with liquidity. The way most acquisitions go is like a PE firm borrows money 60 to even 75% of the acquisition cost, holding the business itself as collateral, optimizes it, and sells it, hopefully at a higher price. Needless to say, the sales cycles for something like this are very large, and there are times that in order to see some movement, they might, you know, take it out of one pocket and put it into another, if you know what I mean. But, excuse me, isn't this what we see with way bigger budgets in tech companies as well? What exactly do you think the S&P 500 is made out of? Mark Rowan from Apollo said, "We basically leverage the entire retirement fund of the US to Nvidia." Now, I like Mark. I mean, yeah, he lobbies, but he calls out the bullshit. He had me at, they say public is safe and private is risky. What if public is safe and risky and private is safe and risky? I don't know how long it took for him to look himself in the mirror one morning while shaving and formulate this, but it was gold and valid. So, like, former investment bankers and M&A specialists take care of PE deals because they're good deal makers and they have good relationships with banks in order to secure these types of loans. That's not a bad thing. Furthermore, Patrick, nobody expects them to actually manage a goddamn plumbing company. They secure the cash flow. And where do you think the people cashing out are going to take their earnings? Now, it's time to bring in those familiar faces that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Alex and Layla Hormozy. Their PE company, Acquisition.com, is working so well because they are the masters of the most important equation of running any business: customer value versus customer acquisition cost. It's like they mastered thermodynamics and are now driving race cars while we're all out here stuck on our bicycles trying to figure out our own businesses. Granted, I suspect they also use numbers and narratives, sleazy tactics to paint a better picture than reality. Remember the 100 million book launch? Remember Alex beating J.K. Rowling in book sales or something? Well, when you look at selling a $5,000 bundle to a live stream of what, 120,000 people, conversion rate would be 17%, which is totally acceptable. I don't think he sold that many though. I think some of the transactions were in between companies held by Acquisition.com. Now, it's a hot take, I know. I also think that many of the books that he sold before the launch, but I have to add that was probably at a pretty high cost because of paid advertising. Anyway, back to your business. Paid ads are the fastest, most predictable way to acquire new customers. If you are selling something that is $3,000 a pop or above, you can afford to predictably gain new customers. This makes your business extremely sexy to investors. You can finance these. I would recommend you seek private loans, short term loans. This will help you build healthy relationships with investors. They might later want to buy equity in your business. Don't do that too soon, though. Don't dissolve yourself that early, but do it eventually. You see, I believe in diversification and decentralization. I believe that we should split both cash flow and liability the same way I believe in true friendship and love. When two people work on something, it's not twice the output, it's like four times the output. Let me explain what I mean. Person A works individually on some things. Person B works individually on some things. Person A leads the collaborative effort between person A and person B on some things. And sometimes person B leads the collaborative effort between person A and person B. And it's 2025. We don't measure output by quantity, we measure it by quality. And I think vision, i.e., a broader perspective, brings quality. Speaking of diversification, I remember seeing these doomy and gloomy videos on YouTube regarding how Big Bad BlackRock and JP Morgan are buying into US critical infrastructure and industries, and how people are protesting because they want these things to be state owned or something. Bro, do you really want an overbloated entity stretched so thin that changes leadership every 4 years based on who has the most money to campaign. Control things like that? I mean, yeah, companies want to maximize shareholder value, but they also want you to still be able to afford what it is they are selling. In the case of central economic planning, some stuff just fucking dies suddenly, and you don't even know why. Maybe it's war economy, maybe it's Maybelline. I would like to also point out that all this stuff, all these asset classes, pension funds, everything is in national currency. Let us not pretend in itself isn't volatile. I wondered this year that maybe the S&P 500 was doing so well because the dollar wasn't doing so well. So, what do you do with cash anyway? Now, I love the independence of central banks. I love how the chairman of the Federal Reserve is basically untouchable. I think that's a good thing. I think that is very democratic. Checks and balances. However, speaking of democracy, I would like to address the issue of the pension funds. Being able to expose pension funds the way they are to things like stock markets or to private equity or to fucking crypto, I think that is a little less democratic. Oh, Torino, you would say. We expose them to free markets. Well, yes and no. Free markets are never really that free. I've demonstrated how the Hormozis can tamper with the narrative while providing the solid numbers. I've mentioned that Mark Rowan said that private is safe and risky, but so is public. I've yet to mention the Norwegian pension fund. Who the hell knows how that is actually being managed? Norway. Zero carbon footprint, funded by selling fossil fuels. Don't get high on your own supply. What a fucking hypocrite. Back to freedom. The only freedom we have is free will. Free markets aren't that free. Democratic elections aren't that democratic. All of these things are vulnerable to the 51% attack we know is a major liability in a decentralized, tokenized economy. Because sooner or later, it kind of gets, well, not centralized, but concentrated. And it's our job as entrepreneurs to adjust our strategies constantly, to not create enemies, but allies, healthy partnerships. Money in itself is not only truly meaningless, but hoarding cash is actually a liability. If we keep all our cash on the stock market instead of using it in the real world, what do you think is going to happen eventually? So use cash to build, invest in yourself. Nobody can take that away from you. Build businesses, build healthy partnerships. If you want to learn how to do all that, there are some useful links below. And now I'm going to the beach.